Does any supervisors have any comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on. Communications, I have none. We're going to discuss the resolution to ratify the extending in the state of emergency. I will have Corporation Counsel speak on that resolution, and we can go from there as far as discussion. Yes, sir.
Can I ask why this resolution was sent to committee, directly to committee instead of going to the county board first?
It was a timing issue.
With all due respect, I would see this as a time issue, I think. And it was not last minute thing.
Can you speak in the mic? Can we turn the mic?
Yeah,
Sure.
I'd like to hear.
Sure.
Restate that, actually.
Yes, sir.
Whoever knows what happened to repeat everything.
Yes, he will. His mic's on. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'm not really sure. I don't see anywhere where it's time sensitive, and this was done like at the last minute before it was coming to the county board, and then all of a sudden it was decided to send it to
Supervisor Nudo, hold on one second. He just said what he said. He's stating that
He asked originally
why the meeting was tonight,
why the meeting was tonight.
correct? That was your first,
why it was sent to committee tonight.
yeah, why are we taking up on the executive committee tonight?
Okay, and the other thing, even if it was sent to committee, I believe this should have gone to the legislative committee and not the executive committee, because that would be changing some ordinance or whatever, which all of those should go to the legislative committee.
Okay. I'll refer to Corporation Counsel. We discussed that. I disagree with you respectfully. The legislative committee was not the committee to hear this. Can I get some
I would seek the permission to object to this on a point of order, and I would direct your attention to the Chapter 2, the ordinances of the County Board Rules of Procedure. Namely, that what is before us this evening is improperly calendared as a resolution when it should be calendared as a county ordinance change. County Board Rules of Procedure are not resolutions. They are part of the ordinances. They are Chapter 2. There are some 25 ordinances. And if you look at the rules, and I would hope that all of us would have those rules here in front of you, that were revised and adopted as most recently as March 20th of 2018. I think it is quite clear that it provides there two things that I think are germane. One is that if you're going to amend an ordinance, it has to have two readings. That has always been the tradition of the board. The chair then refers it to a committee, and at the second reading, it comes back. And if you look at 2.14, if you have your rules, it's at page 15, it says that no standing rule or order of the board is, as herein adopted, may be rescinded or changed, nor any new rule or order added hereto except by amendment to this ordinance by a 2/3 vote. So while I understand that you want to talk about this resolution, and we certainly have had a lot of time to draft a resolution like this that could have been presented at what was the last meeting, which was canceled. This tonight would have been the second reading. And now, of course, there's this panic that seems to be infiltrating the administration and hurry up and pass this and forget about the rules. The rules are very, very clear that what you're doing here cannot be done. And it cannot be amended by resolution. It has to be done by ordinance, because that's the way we originally adopted it. That's the way this board organized it. It has to have 2 readings. It has to be noticed twice. It has to pass by a 2/3 vote. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that what you have here be set aside, that it be drafted properly in the form of an ordinance, that it be calendared for a first and a second reading, and that it be brought on just like any other change to any other ordinance that we have. So this is the route that you've chosen, or the Corporation Council has chosen, or the administration has chosen. I don't know which. But it is not the right chosen path, and I think we've got to respect the rules that this board has adopted and not rescinded.
Okay, that's it, Supervisor Rose?
It is.
Thank you. I'm going to defer to Corporation Council. Can you speak on Supervisor Rose's comment, please?
Sir, well, should I speak on Supervisor Rose's comments or Supervisor
No,
Nudo's
Supervisor
comments?
Nudo was first, so let's take his.
Let me speak first then to Supervisor Nudo's comments, which, as I understand them, boil down essentially to the question of why this wasn't placed on a board agenda for referral to a committee, as has been the typical practice, and why it was sent to the executive committee rather to the legislative. As far as the first consideration goes, I would point out that the practice that has been followed of communications and referrals is not a board rule. It is a policy that was put in place by Chairman Esposito at the beginning of 2019, I believe.
Correct.
It permits for the waiving of that policy in terms of time sensitivity in nature, and I respectfully disagree with Supervisor Nudo. This is a time-sensitive matter. The existing state of emergency, as declared by County Executive Cruiser, expires in a few days. It is, in fact, in my opinion, vital that the board take this up and act on it. The chair agreed that this was a time-sensitive matter and placed it before the executive committee. So to the second point, why the executive committee? Specifically, the rules indicate all matters relating to strategic planning for the greater good of Kenosha County and other matters as deemed necessary and proper by the county board chair shall be referred to the executive committee. This certainly falls into that rubric. Chair Esposito determined that the proper place to hear this, because it deals with a couple of different aspects, including the declaration, or more specifically, the extension of the existing declaration of emergency, clearly a matter that is for the general good, the greater good of Kenosha County, and certainly one that touches on a number of different areas. It was deemed appropriate that it come to the executive committee. In response to Supervisor
Let him, we will address that in a second. Let him address Supervisor Rose's concern, and we'll come back to this, okay? Thank you. Go ahead, Corporation Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to Supervisor Rose, it is, he has accurately read Chapter 2.14 of the County Board Rules, which indicates that they shall not be rescinded or changed, or any new rule or order added except by amendment by the 2/3 vote as he described. However, I would argue that this is not the situation that is contemplated by Chapter 2.14, which deals with standing changes, permanent changes to standing rules. What we are dealing with here is an emergency situation. I would refer to Chapter 232.14 of the state statutes, Wisconsin state statutes, which deal with the powers of a local government during an emergency. It includes the ability by ordinance or resolution to order whatever is necessary and expedient for the health, safety, protection, and welfare of persons and property within the local unit of government. What we are looking at here is acknowledging the state of emergency that exists and making some temporary changes in order to effectuate our ability to continue conducting business in a safe manner under the current situation. I would argue that it is not necessary to proceed under 2.14 as an ordinance. I would argue that this is appropriate to proceed in the way that it is drafted in order to deal with it on the emergency situation.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Nudo.
Thanks. Okay, I want to go back to the part, I know that Corporation Council just read on page 2.5F about the Executive Committee, but then also just below that, there is the Legislative Committee, which all matters relating to the policies and rules of the procedures of the county board, intergovernmental relations, communications, pending or proposed legislation, the office of the Corporation Council and other governmental matters which are to come before the county board should be referred to the Legislative Committee, which I think that's what this comes in place. The other thing is, maybe I can make a couple points and then we go from there.
Yeah, but I'm going to give you a little bit of time because we do need to get to the resolution. We're not going to debate this and run out of time before the county board, so
Okay.
please
The
speed
other
it up.
thing- the
Because
other-
I'm sure he has an answer for your,
Okay, I hope it does. And I've been trying to get an answer before, but I could not get one, by the way.
Okay.
The other thing is this resolution, which I believe should be, I still believe it should be an ordinance instead of a resolution. It's got more than one thing in there. Even if we agree that this part could go under a resolution, okay? What about the other part? We're changing the county board rules about the attendance, that we can do it virtual attending, and also about the suspension of including citizen comments, and which I cannot recall it. I know Corporation Council put in their statute 232, I believe, if I'm correct. That's what it was put at.
I was speaking about the state statutes, yes.
Okay, and I believe you put a resolution, statute number 223 or something like that, which, by the way, it's the wrong one. It should be 323.11. So on that, we cannot change unless it's done by an ordinance with 2 readings and 2/3 of the board voting for that. So just on that, we're trying to incorporate, we're trying to throw something in there just to get away with some of the other stuff. I think, and again, I'm going back, it's not really an emergency. If it was an emergency, that we had plenty of time that could have been addressed before, but nobody did anything until the last minute. So
we understand your objection, Supervisor Nudo. Supervisor Rose is also, Corporation Council, can you speak to Supervisor Nudo's last comments? Because I didn't quite get all of it, so.
I take offense at the notion that we're trying to slip anything past anyone. This is a clear resolution. Everything is there. It is laid out specifically. It is all related to the current state of emergency. It is the steps that my office believes are necessary for us to be able to proceed with virtual meetings, which are the safest way for us to be conducting business right now. It's what's being recommended by the Wisconsin Counties Association to their members counties in terms of doing virtual meetings rather than in-person meetings. It's in front of a committee. It's having the opportunity to be vetted. It will be in front of the board. I continue to assert, as I did a moment ago, that I believe it is appropriate and proper under both our ordinance, Chapter 5 on emergencies and Chapter 323.14 dealing with emergency management under the Wisconsin state statutes.
So it is 323, as I stated, and not 232 or whatever it was put it in there before. It's 323, statute 323, correct?
Yes, which I believe is what is listed in the draft, or excuse me, I believe that's also listed in the resolution, Supervisor Nudo.
And thus it was 232 or something like that.
I apologize if I had a typo in the correspondence.
Okay.
All right, so with that being said, I am going to have Corporation Council go forward with the explanation of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some remarks prepared that I was intending to use before the full board if this matter passes the committee. So I won't do them now. I've sent a communication to everyone on the board. Hopefully you've all had an opportunity to review that, which sort of breaks down what is contained in the resolution that's in front of you. Essentially, it is in three parts. There is the part which is, for the most part, boilerplate language, which has been supplied by the Wisconsin Counties Association, which was tweaked slightly in order to extend the current state of emergency, which was declared by the county executive on March 12th. Our ordinance indicates that after 30 days, those declarations of emergency by the county executive end unless they have been extended by the board, and so there is language in there relating to states of emergency, emergency powers, and an extension of the current state of emergency as required under our ordinance. As I indicated, this doesn't shift powers as long as the board is functioning. Matters that are supposed to come before the board will continue to come before the board. There is not a significant power shift to the executive, despite what some might think, reviewing our ordinance and the statute as well as the language in the resolution. It's simply not accurate. The second aspect, again, as recommended, is steps necessary for the board to be able to move for its meetings and for committee meetings to be held virtually. It requires a temporary modification of our rules relating to the requirement that individuals be physically present in order to vote, as well as a temporary suspension of the public comments section, because with the technological approach that we are intending to take toward board and committee meetings, we just haven't found a way yet to have citizen comments occurring sort of, if you will, in real time. It is a temporary matter. We will be seeking comments from citizens in writing ahead of time. I believe we've received one for the meeting this evening, which will be read at the board meeting. Certainly, it is my intent to continue to permit citizens to be able to address their elected officials in an appropriate manner while continuing to keep everyone safe and continuing to keep the meetings going appropriately. Third and final is a request that we temporarily suspend a couple of provisions of the civil service ordinance. This was done at the request of the sheriff, and again is done specifically because we may have an instance coming up where, if we are dealing with vacancies in the sheriff's department, we may have candidates who are current sworn law enforcement officers who would be able to essentially hit the ground running, rather than hiring someone who might be higher on the hiring list but would have to be sent to the academy and wouldn't be able to do us the immediate good that someone who is currently employed by another law enforcement agency would. All of these are temporary measures. All of these expire at the end of the state of emergency. That's really the three aspects of this resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Can you speak to the issues of meetings? This resolution doesn't state that all meetings would be virtual.
Correct. It gives the...
I want everybody to understand this.
That is correct. What it certainly permits but does not require for people to participate in meetings virtually.
So that being said, the meeting is codependent on the chair of the committee. If they want to have an in-person meeting, they can, but a supervisor can log in virtually if they feel it's not safe enough to be there, correct?
That would be correct, yes.
So I just want everybody to be aware of that and understand that concept going forward. Any discussion on this? Supervisor Nudo.
Going back on the virtual meetings, what's going to happen, it seems like, or eventually, on the 21st, we're going to have an election for chair and vice chair. How is that going to be done? I know I asked Corporation Counsel the other day, but there is nothing definite, or nobody knows what's going to happen. How are we going to do it if it's done virtually?
I don't have an answer yet, Supervisor Nudo. I've started looking at some ideas. I also, as I advised you on the phone, am expecting guidance from the WCA. We are not the only county dealing with this. We are not the only county moving toward virtual meetings. There are going to be a number of counties that are going to have exactly the same questions, and I'm expecting that we're going to have guidance in the next week as to how best to deal with an organizational meeting.
And that's one of the reasons that I think we should wait to vote on this year. The other thing is, you just mentioned that one of the changes in this year is about the civil service ordinance, okay? And I will underline ordinance. So we're changing an ordinance, which here requires 2 readings and a 2/3 vote. So just out of your words, you did call it an ordinance, so that's what we're doing. It's not it is an ordinance.
If I may respond, a change to the civil service ordinance does not require a 2/3 vote. And secondly, as I previously indicated, it is my belief that the powers are inherent in the board to take whatever steps are necessary in the state of the emergency to deal with it. I am looking the same way I'm talking about the rules. It is my view that this is within the board's purview to make these temporary changes during the state of emergency. These are not permanent changes. They will not last. They will not extend beyond the state of the emergency.
Wouldn't that need a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean.
Okay, in other words, like you said, that the board can vote to change or to make exceptions or whatever you want to call it, but don't we have to suspend the rules in order to do that?
We are taking up an emergency resolution. I see nothing in either our ordinance on emergencies or in the statute that indicates that an emergency resolution has to pass by anything other than a majority vote.
Okay, and one more question, and then I'll try to keep my mouth shut.
Well, yeah, because we're running out of time.
Okay, well, I mean, that's one of the reasons we should have took this before today. Why are we putting 90 days? Nowhere I heard anybody saying that this is going to last for 90 days. In fact, even today, they were talking that after Easter, probably, everything is already coming down. So why we need an extension of 90 days when we're not going, I don't think we're going to need it. And if we need more, that could have been done at a later date.
Supervisor, as I indicated in the email that I sent out earlier today, if the board or the committee feels that a shorter period of time is appropriate, certainly a motion can be made to amend it. I put in 90 days because I thought it gave everyone the most flexibility to deal with the fact that we simply don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know what's going to happen. There are some people indicating they think that things are going to go back to normal shortly. There are other medical experts saying we've got to be hunkering down for the long haul. But if people want to shorten this to a shorter period than 90 days, that is certainly within the board's purview to make that amendment, and so be it.
I'm sorry, I did lie. I have one more question. I'll try to make it quick. You just say that you drafted this resolution, so the resolution came from your office and nobody else? I believe it's my understanding that any resolution or ordinances or anything should come out of any of the county board supervisors. So now we have the corporation council to make resolutions?
No, that's not accurate, Supervisor. The office has certainly drafted resolutions before. They do not have to be brought by a member of the board. They're brought by staff or drafted by staff all the time.
They're drafted, but they're not suggested by corporation council, though.
This is before the board, Supervisor Nudo. If that is going to be a grounds to vote against it, then vote against it. If somebody moves for the committee to approve it, that is in order.
Thank you. Now I'll try to keep my
I
mouth
had
shut.
Supervisor Alverman, if you can come up to the podium. He had his hand up before you, Supervisor Decker.
I would suggest to Supervisor Dudo, Supervisor Rose, that we move this to the county board. And if you want to make changes, I could see this easily being a 60-day. Some people are saying longer. I don't think 90 is outrageous, because if we're in great shape in July, county executive can remove the state of emergency.
Absolutely.
It can happen within a day. It doesn't have to run to that 90 days. It could go 72 days. So this is nothing to be afraid of. This is us protecting ourselves, our citizens, our children, and it's what and everyone, every doctor in the country is asking people to do. I don't really like even having to speak with this mask on. I'd rather be looking at a screen, and I hate screens. So I think we need to follow the advice that we're getting from around the country and around the world, and don't be afraid of 90 days. That's as I said, that can easily be 72, it can be 61. Or tonight, move it to 60 days, and if things are bad, the county executive will have to do it again. If you think about this, the county executive did not have to call each of us and ask if he could do this state of emergency. This is something legal. It's something that he has the power to do. They're asking us to extend it and to go along with it. It's nothing to be afraid of. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Decker.
Thank you. I just have one question for Corporation Counsel. You had stated state statute as to why Supervisor Rose's 2/3 vote and that it doesn't have to be an ordinance and resolution. What state statute was that? I missed that.
I'm referring Supervisor Decker to 323.14, which is on local government powers in an emergency.
Okay, 322.
323.14, is that
Yes.
correct? 323.14,
Thank you.
okay? Any other supervisors' discussion? Supervisor Rose.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I would move to adjourn this meeting so that we can take this resolution up promptly before the county board. It is just minutes away from 7:30. It's pointless to debate this thing twice, and so I would move to adjourn.
Well, I'm not going to move to adjourn. That's out of order, Supervisor Rose.
No, I take exception to that. Motion to adjourn is always in order. If the chair recognizes me, I have that right.
Right.
And I would move to overrule the decision of the chair.
Well,
It is always.
Supervisor Rose, I
it is
believe you're out
always-
of order.
No, I'm not.
We are going to vote on this matter. The executive committee has heard it.
Well,
we
let
are
me
gonna
speak
vote
to
on
it
it.
then. Then if we're going to debate it, then I ask to be recognized. My
Then
light
you
is
can
on.
debate it, Supervisor Rose. I will give you a few minutes.
A few minutes. I don't think that there's any rule that says I can talk 2 minutes or 10 minutes.
Supervisor Rose, go ahead.
There are a number of ideas in this resolution, and it should be broken up into several resolutions. First of all, the concept of a virtual meeting is, in general, acceptable. I've done Zoom conferences, many of them, in the court. I think it is certainly possible. I don't like the idea of a virtual meeting, either through Google or through Zoom, for the election of officers. We can hold that election of officers just as we are meeting this evening, masked and able to speak, and there is no reason why we cannot do that for the election of officers. I find that with Zoom conferences in court, they're okay for routine types of things. We're going to schedule something in the future for trial, for another pretrial conference. They do not lend themselves to discussion and debate.
Excuse me, Supervisor Rose, you're talking Zoom. I just want to be confident everyone understands here, we're not using Zoom.
Yeah, I know we're using Google, but it's the
It's a
same type
WebEx.
thing.
Okay.
It's the same type thing. I've used it.
Okay.
So I'm just expressing myself. I don't think that those kinds of things lend themselves to argumentation and debate. The second thing is the sheriff's ability to ignore the civil service rules. I read what he had to say in the newspaper. Sounded reasonable. I heard what Mr. Cardamone said, which was an abbreviation of that. But words do matter, and I would like to have you take a look at page 3 of this resolution, because page 3 doesn't say that. Page 3 in that resolution clause says that the sheriff has the authority to hire deputies and that the rules are suspended and it suggests that he work with the Director of Human Resources or designee and the county executive. He can do that. He can work with them, he can listen to them, but ultimately, he can hire whomever he pleases. Now, if the Corporation Council had narrowly drafted that resolution clause to fulfill what the sheriff said in the newspaper and what the Corporation Council had to say this evening, I would say, fine, that sounds reasonable. But the grant of authority is unlimited. The sheriff could hire whomever he pleases, trained or untrained, and designate that as a deputy sheriff. That's what that resolution says. I'm not going to support that. The third concept is the state of emergency. And this is something that should have been brought to this attention immediately. We should have had that last meeting. And at that last meeting, we could have talked about extending it or not. It is my view that we need to follow whatever they do nationally. Whatever the president designates and encourages, I think is what we need to do. I heard Supervisor Elberman say every medical personnel recommends a lengthy shutdown of the economy of the country. I disagree. I was with a doctor this afternoon, told him about this resolution for 90 days, and he thought that was ridiculous. And what he suggested, and what I would suggest to this board, which is far more sensible, is that we review this from week to week. I know 3 businesses right now in downtown Kenosha who are going to close. And I think the longer this is extended, it will irreparably damage the economics of this country and this community.
Excuse me, Supervisor, as long as what is extended? This emergency?
That's correct.
Okay.
For 90
I
days.
mean, you're
It is too
kind of getting
long.
off on a tangent here.
No, I'm not on a tangent at all. If we're going to extend the emergency, we ought to extend it week by week and review it. Because if you say 90 days, it will be 90 days, I can assure you of that. Because the executive will be afraid to act and make it any shorter period of time. So I'm also concerned about what it is that we are giving to him that he does not already have. He has authority as county executive to run the operations of the county. We seem to be giving him some sort of carte blanche authority. I am very troubled when you designate a county executive or a governor or a sheriff or a president with unlimited authority. It's completely contrary to the history of this country. So I want to know specifically what it is we are giving to the executive that he doesn't already have under the state statutes to operate the Kenosha County. To shut down businesses as we are, to lay off people, is a sure prescription for depression. I'm not going to support that.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve this emergency? Supervisor Decker.
I got a question on the 4th. Be it further resolved that the county executive is hereby authorized and directed by the board to coordinate and administer the county's emergency management response and to carry out the orders of the board. Why are we switching the emergency response, emergency management back to the county executive when after the flooding of 2017, we switched it from the county executive to the sheriff's department, to the sheriff?
Corporation Counsel, can you speak to that, please?
I'm sorry, I can't. I don't know specifically what you're talking about in terms of 2017. Again, I'm looking specifically, this was language that came from the WCA. I used the template from the WCA. There's nothing meant to be untoward here. We're talking about doing it in accordance with the statute and with our emergency ordinance, Chapter 5.
Okay, so you don't have an answer to that.
I
Okay.
don't have an answer. I'm sorry, Supervisor.
And
Decker.
then going back to statute 323.14, I just read through it. If you can please tell me where in there it states that the ongoing duties because of this in the state of an emergency allows us to bypass all of our rules of procedure And our ordinances, please explain it to me, because I don't read that anywhere in here.
Exactly.
I'm looking, Supervisor Decker, at sub 4, and I apologize, it's getting very hard to read because my glasses are fogging up. The emergency of the power of the governing body conferred under 323.11 includes the general authority by order, to order by ordinance or resolution whatever is necessary and expedient for the health, safety, protection, and welfare of persons and property within the local unit of government. I am interpreting that as giving broad powers to do what is necessary.
So in there, it doesn't actually state that it changes, that we don't have to do things by our rules.
I've answered your question, Supervisor.
Okay, so it doesn't state it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Moving forward, I appreciate everybody's debate on this issue. I'm going to confer with the legal counsel that the county has. And again, I'm going to ask for a motion for the resolution and ratifying the extended state of emergency. Do I have a motion? Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Alverman and a second by Vice Chair O'Day.
Roll call requested.
Yes, I figured that would be appropriate, Supervisor Rose. So, Corporation Counsel, could you call a roll call on this for me, please?
Certainly. Esposito.
Yes.
O'Day. Decker.
No?
Frederick. Nudo.
No.
Elverman.
Yes.
Grady.
No.
Rose.
No.
Okay, that resolution fails.
Move to adjourn.
So, second?
A motion by Supervisor Rose, a second by Supervisor Decker. We're adjourned. We'll go right into the county board meeting.